Yeah. It is a truly staggering interdependency.
It really is. We are looking ahead to June 13, 2026, MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, the World Cup group stage clash between Brazil and Morocco. And rather than just looking at this as a football match, we are diving into the source material to use this encounter as a lens, a way to examine two entirely distinct paradigms of national success, cultural identity, and global influence. Exactly. And the source texts on their histories, their economies, and their sporting cultures give us two completely different blueprints for survival.
Right. So I will be arguing that Brazil's paradigm, which is defined by expansive continental scale and creative, spontaneous improvisation, represents the ultimate model of global impact.
And I'll be taking the other side. I'll argue that Morocco's paradigm, relying on deep historical continuity, strategic geographical efficiency, and structural resilience, is fundamentally the superior framework for enduring success.
So let's lay the foundation for the Brazilian model, right? I would characterize it as boundless scale resulting in creative flair. I mean, Brazil isn't just a country. Mathematically and ecologically, it basically functions like a continent.
Covering almost half of South America, yeah.
Exactly. You have the Amazon rainforest acting as the lungs of the planet right alongside the Pantanal, which is the world's largest tropical wetland. It is just an overwhelming explosion of biodiversity. And, this sheer volume translates directly to their footballing psychology. 5 World Cups, an absolute expectation of dominance.
Right. There is an immense psychological weight there.
Yeah, and when you look at their 2026 squad under Carlo Ancelotti, you see that exact reliance on overwhelming, irrepressible force. They completely refuse to be contained by conventional structures. They opt instead to just overwhelm opponents through spontaneous brilliance and relentless volumetric energy.
Well, the scale of Brazil is an empirical fact, sure. But the Moroccan model demonstrates that strategic resilience and ancient continuity offer a much more stable foundation. Where Brazil relies on sheer overwhelming size, Morocco relies on highly efficient strategic leverage.
Okay, leverage in what sense?
Geographic, mostly. Morocco is the ultimate geographical choke point and gateway. It links Africa, Europe, and the Arab world. And because of that positioning, their strength has to be deeply rooted in historical endurance. I mean, we're talking about the Alawite dynasty, established in 1666, surviving centuries of shifting global empires.
That is a long time to hold a crossroads. Yeah.
Exactly. We are looking at cities like Fez. It's a living time machine with a car-free labyrinth of something like 9,000 narrow alleys dating back to the 9th century. So, on the football pitch, this historical reality translates to a profound structural discipline. Under Mohamed Wabi, who took over early in 2026, Morocco isn't attempting to overwhelm you with chaos. They endure. They adapt.
Right. Relying on the structure.
Yes, enduring strength comes from understanding your precise position in the world and maximizing it, rather than just needing to be the biggest entity in the room.
I think that's a fascinating contrast. Let's test how those frameworks manifest practically, starting with the tactical philosophies we are going to see on the pitch in New Jersey. Because Brazil's 2026 tactical blueprint under Ancelotti it's a study in adapting through volume.
The famous Brazilian volume, right?
Yeah. Historically, Brazil is rich in legendary marauding fullbacks, think Cafu or Roberto Carlos, and traditional elite number 9s like Ronaldo. But in this current cycle, they have a really notable depth issue at fullback and lack that traditional focal point up top.
So they just abandon the traditional setup?
Essentially, yes. They embrace a wildly top-heavy 4-2-4 transition system. Ancelotti is utilizing a double pivot, leaving just 2 midfielders, likely Casemiro and Bruno Guimaraes, or maybe Ederson, to cover a massive amount of grass. That is an enormous physical burden.
It sounds almost reckless against a disciplined team.
It is a huge risk, but they take it to feed the raw, terrifying pace of Vinicius Jr. and Rafinha on the wings. And they have Neymar playing a deeper central playmaking role at 34 years old. This setup is the ultimate reflection of the Brazilian concept of gambiarra.
Gambiarra?
Yeah, it's this cultural art of devising brilliant improvised solutions, like a workaround. They lack defensive width, so they simply generate so much attacking chaos that the opponent just cannot exploit their weaknesses.
Well, it is a stunning display of attacking intent, I'll give you that. But that chaotic brilliance creates a massive structural blind spot. And Morocco's tactical evolution under Wahhabi is explicitly engineered to absorb and counter exactly that kind of top-heavy aggression.
Even with their current injuries?
Yes, even with the injuries. I mean, Morocco faces a significant hurdle, we know that. They have a massive crisis at center back, with Naya Figuered failing to regain match fitness. Wahhabi is having to forge a new defensive partnership under intense pressure, likely leaning on Shadi Riyad alongside a late call-up, probably Marwan Sadane. And they've lost Abde Azazali on the wing, too.
That is a lot of structural damage to repair before facing Brazil.
It is. But Morocco's entire system relies on the profound defensive resilience we saw during their historic 2022 run to the semifinals. They utilize a system of compression. Sofiane Amrabat anchors the midfield, and he's specifically tasked with breaking up those Brazilian counterattacks. He's paired with Azzedine Ounahi's elite ball retention to relieve the pressure.
Right, so they absorb and hold the ball.
Exactly. Furthermore, they've integrated Ayoub Bouadi, this incredibly dynamic 18-year-old game changer. They don't need to match Brazil's 4 attackers man for man. They will simply compress the space, suffocate Neymar's passing lanes, and then use Achraf Hakimi's overlapping runs to exploit the exact spaces Ancelotti's system leaves vacant.
The logic is sound. I hear you. But it assumes the structure won't eventually buckle under the sheer weight of the Brazilian attack. I mean, we've seen organized defenses try to compress space against Brazil before.
And sometimes it works beautifully.
Sometimes. But when you have Vinicius Jr., Rafinha, Endrick, and Neymar coming at you in relentless waves, precision engineering often just cracks. It's a matter of kinetic energy. You can build a brilliant system to contain a threat, like a dam. But an unpredictable flood eventually finds the lowest point in the defense and breaks through.
Or, to look at it mechanically, Morocco's defense operates less like a static dam and more like a highly calibrated shock absorber. They don't try to meet that kinetic energy with rigid force.
How do you mean?
They absorb the energy of the Brazilian attackers, deliberately pulling them deep into Moroccan territory, which, by the way, stretches Brazil's already vulnerable double pivot even thinner. And once that energy is absorbed, Hakimi acts as the release valve, springing that kinetic energy back in the opposite direction before Brazil can transition. This philosophy of absorbing pressure and using an opponent's momentum against them, it perfectly mirrors Morocco's broader geographical and economic survival over centuries.
Well, geography is actually the perfect place to examine this further. Because if we are talking about projecting power, Brazil's landscape does that on an absolutely unprecedented scale. You mentioned Morocco as a strategic gateway, but Brazil is a continent-sized economic powerhouse. Look at the raw output.
The agricultural sector?
Yeah, Brazil is a massive agricultural superpower. They're exporting sugarcane, corn, and soybeans to the entire world. They don't just participate in global markets, they dictate global food supply. And visually, the landscape reinforces this dominance. You have the 275 cascading waterfalls of Iguaçu. It's a monster system, nearly 2 miles wide, plunging into the devil's throat.
It is a stunning natural wonder. Absolutely.
Staggering. The sheer hydropower generated there is immense. Brazil's global leverage comes from the fact that it possesses this overwhelming abundance of natural majesty and resources.
Well, Brazil certainly possesses the landmass and the output, but scale is not the same as leverage. Let me explain the mechanism behind that agricultural output because it fundamentally shifts the power dynamic we're talking about.
Okay, I'm listening.
Brazil's soil, particularly in the vast Cerrado biome, where so much of this agriculture takes place, is highly acidic. It's inherently poor in essential nutrients. Soybeans and corn require massive amounts of phosphorus to develop root systems and transfer energy. Without external inputs, Brazil's agricultural output would plummet.
Right, the fertilizer dependency.
Exactly. And who controls over 70% of the world's phosphate rock reserves? Morocco. Morocco exports the raw phosphates and chemical fertilizers that Brazil's entire agricultural engine absolutely relies upon. So while Brazil might be the massive farm feeding the world, Morocco holds the ultimate strategic choke point.
Wow, okay, yeah.
They literally dictate the biological limit of Brazil's growth. That is striking geographic power concentrated in a highly efficient footprint, fortified by a diverse 3,500-kilometer coastline and the sweeping, impenetrable dunes of Erg Chebi.
It is a remarkable geopolitical reality, I won't deny that. But I view that dynamic slightly differently. Yes, Brazil's soil requires Moroccan phosphorus, but if Brazil is the sprawling global farm that literally sustains global food security, Morocco functions as the vital soil scientist.
Which is the person keeping the farm alive.
Essential, undoubtedly, but secondary in terms of sheer visible global presence. When people consume the end product, they experience the scale of the Brazilian output, not the invisible mineral input. And that visibility, that outward expression of scale, completely defines Brazilian culture and their daily lifestyle.
In what ways?
It is a living, breathing force that embraces chaos and volume over strict rules. Take the traditional Brazilian churrascaria. You sit down, you get a coaster, you flip it to green, and an endless parade of waiters brings massive skewers of sizzling, charcoal-grilled meats right to your table, especially the garlic rub picanha. It is a celebration of abundance.
It's certainly a lot of food.
It's glorious. And look at how they approach culinary boundaries, like Brazilian pizza. They use the dough as a blank canvas for literally anything. Beef stroganoff, French fries, hot dogs. The dessert pizzas have M&Ms and condensed milk on them. It is a culture that actively dismantles rigid culinary rules and improvises based purely on joy and excess.
Well, that culinary improvisation is fascinating, but I would argue that true cultural depth requires the preservation of boundaries, not the dismantling of them.
Interesting. How so?
Morocco offers a profound preservation of history, which provides an anchoring psychological depth. Moroccan cuisine isn't about throwing everything onto a plate. It's about patience and precise chemistry. Take the tagine. It's a slow-cooked, savory stew of chicken or lamb with dried fruits and warming spices like saffron, ginger, and cinnamon.
Oh, it's incredible.
It is. And it's cooked perfectly in a cone-shaped clay pot designed specifically to trap condensation and return it to the stew, allowing meats to become incredibly tender in an historically arid environment. And the environment you eat it in is equally deliberate. In Morocco, traditional accommodation is the riad. From the chaotic street, you see nothing but a blank, windowless wall.
So it's closed off.
Exactly. It is a structural defense against the sensory overload of the outside world, but you open a heavy wooden door and step into an opulent, peaceful courtyard oasis, a trickling fountain, citrus trees, and breathtaking geometric mosaic tiles. It is an architecture of interiority. It reflects a society that values refined, ancient, and disciplined boundaries.
The riad is a beautiful concept of interiority, I agree. But Brazil's brilliance is entirely exterior. It is an outward explosion of fervor. I mean, football in Brazil is not merely a sport. It is a shared civic religion. If you go to the Maracanã Stadium, fans sing for 90 minutes straight, waving massive flags, banging drums. During this World Cup match, the literal machinery of the country will pause.
It's a spectacle, for sure.
But that fervor bleeds seamlessly into their everyday existence. At the famous Arpoador Beach in Rio, as the sun dips below the horizon, the entire beach erupts into passionate applause. They literally give the sun a standing ovation. It's an embrace of the present moment. You see it in the omnipresent Vira-Lata Caramelo too, the ubiquitous caramel stray dog.
The dogs?
Yes. Brazilians love these unpedigreed, medium-sized dogs so much there was a massive public push to put them on the 200 real bill. The Vira-Lata Caramelo is the perfect mascot for Brazil because it represents surviving and thriving through adaptation, charm, and an absolute rejection of formal pedigree.
Okay, but Morocco undeniably shares that intense exterior fervor, even if it's channeled differently. Did we not see the streets of Casablanca, Rabat, and Marrakesh come to a complete joyous standstill during the 2022 World Cup? The Moroccan street is an intense, demanding sensory experience every single day.
Fair point.
Navigating the ancient souks is an exercise in extreme hyper-awareness. When you hear a porter yell, "Balak, balak," you have a split second to flatten yourself against a wall to let a cart or a donkey pass. And speaking of the relationship with animals, Morocco is essentially overseen by feline overlords.
Right, the cats.
Street cats sleep on expensive silk carpets in the Medina and sit prominently in front of butcher shops, treated with immense communal respect. But beyond the street-level intensity, there is a distinct environmental adaptation that flips expectations. In the arid Suez Valley, you witness goats standing on the thin branches of thorny argan trees, 15 feet in the air, foraging for nuts. It looks impossible to an outsider, but it is a highly evolved biological workaround to find sustenance in a challenging landscape.
Now, listeners might hear about tree-climbing goats and think, that flips expectations. But let me introduce you to the mechanics of the Brazilian electric shower, the chuveiro electric.
Oh no, the electric showers?
Yes. To an outsider, standing in a puddle of water directly beneath a sparking, buzzing electrical wire taped to the shower head seems like a terrifying lack of infrastructure. But mechanically, it is a brilliant triumph of localized efficiency. Why invest massive capital into a potentially failing, centralized water heating grid, which loses thermal energy as water travels through pipes, when you can heat the water instantaneously at the exact point of use?
It's certainly a direct solution.
It perfectly encapsulates the reliance on Gambiarra. It solves the problem immediately, utilizing whatever materials are at hand, completely bypassing structural limitations.
Well, I counter that localized efficiency with the extreme mechanics of Moroccan mint tea pouring. It is an everyday ritual where waitstaff pour scalding hot tea from a teapot held 3 feet in the air. They do this not for theatricality, but for a highly specific chemical reason.
Wait, there's a chemical reason for the pour?
Yes. The distance aerates the tea and creates a mandatory layer of foam at the top of the glass, which insulates the liquid while simultaneously cooling it enough to drink. It defies physics, and they don't splash a single drop. Furthermore, consider the traditional public bathhouse, the hammam. It's an intense physical process. You are scrubbed down with black olive soap and a sandpaper-like mitt called a kess, with an intensity that borders on the aggressive.
Sounds intense.
It is, but the mechanism behind it is total exfoliation and improved circulation. It is a rigorous physical discipline that leaves you feeling fundamentally restored. Both of our examples, the electric shower and the hammam, demonstrate cultures that are completely unafraid of intensity to achieve their goals.
I agree completely. And examining these daily rituals reveals a fascinating psychological convergence between our two paradigms. Because for all of Brazil's high-speed transition football and Morocco's ancient structural discipline, both cultures fundamentally reject rigid, external chronometry.
Ah, you mean their relationship with time?
Exactly. In Brazil, punctuality is often viewed as a social faux pas. Brazilian time operates on human rhythm, not the clock. If you are invited to a gathering at 8 p.m. and actually arrive at 8 p.m., you will likely catch the host still preparing the house. Time flexes to accommodate the social reality.
It is the exact same underlying psychology in Morocco, operating under Inshallah Standard Time. A stated time is merely a hopeful suggestion. If a craftsman says a project will be finished tomorrow at 2 p.m., Inshallah, that might mean tomorrow or Thursday or perhaps next week.
Right. It's completely fluid.
Both nations intuitively understand that the complexities of human life and social interaction thrive outside of strict artificial schedules. It is a shared recognition that reality cannot entirely be commanded by a ticking clock.
Which brings us back to the crux of this debate. When these two systems clash in real time on June 13, 2026, we are witnessing the collision of these vast philosophies. I maintain that Brazil's model is the ultimate recipe for global impact. The sheer magnitude of their natural resources, the boundless joy of their cultural improvisations, and Ancelotti's top-heavy 4-2-4 system are all expressions of the same truth.
Overwhelming scale.
Overwhelming scale paired with creative Gambiarra is an unstoppable force. It is a nation constantly evolving its presence. We will even see a cultural milestone in this match, with Roger Ibanez becoming the first Brazilian player to wear the No. 24 jersey at a World Cup.
Right? Reclaiming a number historically avoided due to outdated prejudices.
Exactly. Brazil pushes forward by continually reinventing its massive, vibrant self.
And I maintain that Morocco's model is fundamentally more enduring. Morocco proves that true power lies in strategic leverage, not sheer footprint. They dictate the biological capacity of global agriculture through their phosphate reserves. They preserve their societal core through the inward-facing architecture of the Riyadh and the ancient pathways of Fez.
It is an incredibly strong foundation.
It is. And on the pitch, Wahib's squad anchored by Amrabat and propelled by Hakimi represents a disciplined structure built on absorbing pressure and striking with surgical precision. They are the gateway. When the chaotic, expansive energy of the Brazilian attack crashes into the structural resilience of the Moroccan system, I believe the foundational discipline will hold.
Yet we cannot ignore the deep interdependency you illuminated earlier. The fact that Brazil's vast, continent-spanning agricultural output is chemically dependent on the ancient minerals mined from the Moroccan earth is a brilliant reality. It demonstrates that while these paradigms approach the world from opposite directions, they are inextricably linked in sustaining global food security.
Precisely. They rely on each other to feed the globe, but, well, only one philosophy can secure the 3 points in the group stage.
Without a doubt, while our analysis spans history, economics, and sociology, the immediate outcome will be decided on the grass in New Jersey. So we turn it over to the listeners. If you had to operate within one of these frameworks, the expansive, improvisational scale of Brazil or the deeply rooted strategic resilience of Morocco, which worldview provides the strongest path forward?
We've explored the mechanisms behind the culture and the tactics, but the intersection of football and national identity is brilliantly complex. It is a subject that demands continuous examination.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep debating.